99% of Tarkov players are nuking their FPS and visibility by blindly copying some random streamer settings made for completely different hardware. In this video, you're going to fix that and tune Tarkov for your PC. My own PC is tuned by Merc Tweaks from Stinsbuilt. If you want done-for-you tuning, there's a booking link in the description. But in this video, I'll show you how to get most of the same benefits yourself. This video is fully timestamped, so if you already know your bottleneck or want to skip to a later section, you can jump around using the chapters. Quick disclaimer, these are just recommendations. You're responsible for any changes you make to your PC or settings. But before you touch a single slider, you need to know what's actually slowing your game down. Are you CPU bound, GPU bound, or a mix of both? If you skip this step, you end up lowering the wrong settings and wondering why nothing changes. I'll give you the quick version here, and if you want the full written guide and prompts on how to benchmark Tarkov, those notes are in the Lettyverse Discord under the settings channel. There's a link in the description, and if you have questions, you can ping me directly in there. You're CPU bound when your processor is the main thing limiting how many frames you get. A quick way to spot this, your CPU usage is very high, often close to max, while your GPU still has headroom. In that case, dropping graphics settings like textures or shadows doesn't really help because the GPU wasn't the slow part to begin with. This happens a lot in Tarkov on maps like streets or any area with tons of objects, AI, physics, and draw calls. The game is asking the CPU to do a ridiculous amount of work every frame. In simple terms, CPU bound equals the brain, CPU is the bottleneck, the GPU is waiting for work. When you're CPU bound, the best changes are the ones that reduce CPU work per frame, things like object detail, LOD, overall visibility, or upgrading to a faster CPU or RAM. You're GPU bound when the graphics card is what's holding your FPS back. Here, the GPU sits at between 95 and 100% usage, while the CPU has room left. So, GPU bound, the graphics card is the bottleneck. The best changes are visual cost per frame, resolution, quality presets, effects, and upgrading the GPU. Before touching any settings, you need a repeatable baseline. The goal is to make each test run as similar as possible so you can trust the changes you see. So I use a free software called CapFrameX to benchmark Tarkov specifically. To download it, I head over to capframex.com, click download, and then pick the installer zip. First, pick one map you play a lot. Second, choose one route you can repeat, same general path, and a similar length of time. Ideally, use a co-op raid with a friend. Turn scavs off so AI doesn't randomly tank your FPS. If you can't run co-op, use offline raids with the same settings every time. Once the raid is set up, you're going to record a single clean run and then reuse that route for every future test. When you're ready to move, start a capture in CapFrame by pressing F11, run your chosen route, move through the same areas, do roughly the same amount of looting or combat each time. After about the same duration as your other test, stop the capture with F11 again. The key is same map, same route, same duration each time you benchmark, so you're comparing apples to apples. Once you're done, your recording will be in JSON format and will be saved as something like capframex-escapefromtarkov.exe- and then the date.json. The default path is the following. Now, this is the part where we look at the results, and reading all the graphs manually is powerful, but it can be a lot. If you want help, you can upload that CapFrameX JSON file to an AI and have it tell you whether you're GPU bound, CPU bound, or mixed. In my Discord under settings, there's a full prompt you can copy. You upload your JSON file, paste the prompt, and it returns a structured summary of your bottleneck. Once you know your bottleneck, you know where to start in the rest of this guide. This makes the whole optimization process targeted, and when BSG will come out with new settings, you can test them on your own PC and know exactly how to optimize for your own rig, thanks to benchmarking. And if you don't really feel like benchmarking, here's the shortcut. Tarkov is extremely CPU heavy, and the clear top dogs right now are the Ryzen 98, 99, 9950 X3D with the 7000 series X3Ds and well-tuned 13th, 14th Gen Intel i5, i7, and i9 just behind them. If you're on one of those with solid RAM, you're most likely to be GPU bound or mixed. If you don't own one of those CPUs, assume you're CPU bound in Tarkov. That is important for the rest of this video because later on, the settings will split into CPU bound versus GPU bound recommendations. Now that you know whether you're CPU or GPU bound, let's fix the in-game settings that matter the most. First, go to Settings and Graphics. Set resolution to your monitor's native resolution. Do not drop resolution to chase FPS. All you really do is make the game blurrier and hurt visibility, especially for spotting players at range. Resolution mainly helps the GPU, so if you're CPU bound, it won't fix your problem anyway. Next, go to screen mode and set it to borderless. Right now, Tarkov's full screen can actually reduce performance and make all tabbing janky. FOV changes how much of the world the game has to render and simulate. In Tarkov, higher FOV often helps performance when you're CPU bound and also improves your awareness in game. If you're CPU bound, you can push it towards the higher end. If you're GPU bound, you can still run high FOV, no problem. It does add a little GPU cost, but it's small compared to other visual settings. Aim for the FOV that feels good first, and then tune other settings around it. Object LOD quality is one of the biggest levers for Tarkov FPS, especially if you're CPU bound, which is a lot of people. It controls how detailed objects are at distance and how far out higher detailed models are used. Higher LOD equals more detail, more CPU and GPU work. Lower LOD equals more pop-in, but a lot more FPS. If you're CPU bound, set object LOD as low as you can tolerate visually. A great starting point is around 2.0 to 2.5. On streets, going from LOD 4 down to LOD 2 can mean a massive FPS swing, especially in heavy areas. If you're GPU bound or mixed, 2 to 2.5 is still a super strong default. Only push it higher if you really hate pop-in and have proven headroom in your benchmark runs. For overall visibility, it controls how far out distant objects are drawn in meters. It mainly affects far horizon objects like cranes and buildings at long range. The performance impact is very minor. Lower values mainly hide far distant objects you might want. Texture quality hits VRAM and RAM and can destroy frame time stability on big maps if you overdo it. If you have 8 to 10 gigs of VRAM, use medium. It looks fine in Tarkov and keeps VRAM usage under control. If you have 12 or 16 gigs of VRAM, you can go to high safely. Avoid ultra for almost everyone, especially if you play Streets of Tarkov. It's just not worth the frame time mess. Set SSR to low or off. It's a GPU heavy cosmetic effect that doesn't help gameplay. Start with off if your GPU has headroom and you like shiny stuff, bump to low. And if your CPU bottlenecked, default to low. Shadow quality, if you're GPU bound, use medium for good balance. If CPU bound, you can still afford medium or high because shadows aren't the main CPU limiter compared to LOD. Visually, medium is a nice default, low makes shadows pop badly and look mushy. Cloud quality, set cloud quality high or just leave it where it is, it barely moves FPS either way. Anti-aliasing is a GPU bound setting and it reduces jagged edges and shimmer. FXAA is very low quality. TAA and TAA high look better, but can blur foliage. Disabled entirely gives maximum clarity, but heavy shimmering. If you're GPU bound, use TAA or TAA high. If you can afford a small FPS cost, turn AA off if you must claw back every frame. If you're CPU bound or mixed, you can safely run higher quality anti-aliasing because GPU headroom is usually available for your setup. Upscalers such as DLSS or FSR render at a lower resolution, then upscale to native, and DLSS is recommended on RTX cards for the best image quality. Lower presets like performance and ultra performance hit clarity heavily. My recommendations, if you're GPU bound, turn an upscaler on, start at quality, then go lower if you need more FPS and can accept more blur. If you're CPU bound, upscaling will not fix the bottleneck. You can keep it off or use quality just for image effects if you like them. If mixed, use quality as a default. and retest with Capframe X to see whether you've shifted into CPU-bound territory. For Tarkov at 1440p, I recommend DLSS preset K if you care about visibility. It is the cleanest option I've found, sharp, and without the extra gain or crunchy artifacts some newer presets add. As new DLSS presets and models come out, I'll update my visibility-focused preset pick in the Lethiverse Discord, so if you're watching this months later, check there for the latest recommendation. Volumetric lighting simulates light beams, God rays, and how light interacts with air and particles. Mainly a visual effect. Low, medium, high look almost the same. Ultra is much heavier on FPS. My recommendation for all bottlenecks is default to low for everyone. It is rarely worth increasing. Resampling multiplies your resolution. Below 1.0 lowers resolution. It's blurry but cheaper for the GPU. Above 1.0 performs super sampling, produces a very sharp image, but it is extremely heavy. My recommendation for everyone is to not use resampling. Leave it at 1.0. HBAO is horizon-based ambient occlusion, and what it does is add contact shadows and subtle darkening where objects meet, improving depth perception. My recommendation is max performance is the safe default for everyone with a decent AO effect with minimal cost. Anisotropic filtering improves clarity of textures viewed at an angle, round, roads, etc. Off makes angled surfaces smeary. Turning it on looks much cleaner. My recommendations, if you're GPU bound and extremely performance sensitive, use per texture. If not strongly GPU bound, set it to on forced with minimal cost and big clarity gain in Tarkov. NVIDIA Reflex. The concept is, think of your CPU as the shot caller and your GPU as the worker. Normally, the worker can have a small line of jobs waiting, so the frame you see is slightly behind your latest input. So what Reflex does, it tightens that up. It sends each job to the GPU just in time, so the frame you see is closer to what you're doing right now in Tarkov. This reduces input lag rather than increasing FPS. So Reflex keeps your picture more in sync with your inputs. It's about input lag, not extra FPS. If you're mostly GPU bound, set Reflex to on. If you're heavily CPU bound, set Reflex to on plus boost. The CPU is choking, so boost keeps GPU clocks high and ready instead of idling. Z-blur, chromatic aberration, and noise. This is purely visual. Turn all three off, they reduce clarity and add visual clutter without any competitive or performance benefit in Tarkov. High quality color is a subtle improvement in color gradients and how light blends with objects. The difference is very small and hard to see. I recommend leaving it to off. The FPS impact is sizable for almost no noticeable quality gain. Grass shadows adds shadows to grass, making it look more natural and less flat. If you're GPU bound, turn grass shadows off if you need every bit of performance. If you're CPU bound or mixed, you can turn grass shadows on if you like the look and accept a small FPS hit. Area light instancing is a new experimental setting that shifts some lighting work from the CPU to the GPU on newer cards, RTX 20 series and RX 6000 series above. On supported hardware, it is meant to ease CPU load in scenes with lots of lights, not give a massive FPS boost. In my testing on a 4070 Ti Super, average FPS was basically the same, but frame times changed a bit. Off has a taller spike and more wobble in the mid frame time range, while on, in red, slightly flattens those spikes and cleans up the tail, matching BSG's moderate increases performance description. My recommendation, if you have a newer GPU, try turning it on and see if your game feels a bit smoother. Otherwise, leave it off. Streets of Tarkov lower texture resolution mode. This automatically lowers Streets texture quality by 1 step compared to your global texture setting. Turn this on if you're not already on low textures, especially important if you run high or ultra textures. Streets is extremely heavy on VRAM and this helps avoid stutters. For post effects, remember this is mostly a GPU side cost. Anytime you add clarity, brightness, or sharpening in this menu, you are paying with a bit of FPS. The hit is small, but if you stack a bunch of effects together, it can add up and even make the image noisier instead of clearer. The way to think about it is, post-effects is your fine-tuning layer, not your main source of brightness. Use your monitor or GPU-controlled panel to do the heavy lifting for gamma and vibrance. Then, you can use light post-effects in-game only if you need a bit more pop. Some of the best players don't lean on post-effects at all for brightness. For example, Desmond Pilak runs almost everything through his monitor settings instead. This keeps visibility high without relying on BSG's filters or burning extra GPU time on heavy post-effects presets. And later in the video, there will be specific color settings for both NVIDIA and AMD that you can use as a better performance alternative to post-effects. So you'll get a strong visibility without throwing away frames. And finally, the main menu background. The main menu background keeps rendering and can affect FPS and VRAM even while you are in RAID. My recommendation, use a static, simple background like the factory or the woods one. Avoid animated or fancy backgrounds like CyberTark, the unheard one. Players have measured noticeable FPS drops up to 20 FPS and extra VRAM use with these. Let's open up Tarkov's launcher and go to settings on the top right. Always make sure exit launcher is checked when the game is running to prevent it from using any unnecessary resources. Also, often clear your cache and delete logs from the logs folder to keep things running smoothly. This next part is all about how to optimize Windows for Tarkov so your OS isn't fighting your FPS. For Windows, we're going to use a tool called WinHands that a lot of PC tuners already trust. First step, go to winhands.net, download the installer from the official website and run the regular installed for all users. Then head over to the Optimize tab, switch to Gaming and Performance, and in the Quick Action section, click Apply Recommended. That one click applies roughly 100 small tweaks that make Windows behave more like a gaming OS. Under the hood, it's doing things like turning on game mode, so Windows prioritizes your game and stops random background junk from stealing CPU time, disabling enhanced pointer precision, cleaning up startup and background apps so fewer things launch and run behind your games, pushing more CPU and GPU priority towards the game's profile so your active game gets more of the scheduler's attention, and enabling hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. The nice part is that WinHands protects you up front. The first time you run it, it enables system restore if it was off, and creates a restore point called WinHands Initial Restore Point. If you ever feel like you went too far with debloating Windows, you can roll back easily in Windows Search, create a restore point, open it, click System Restore, pick WinHands Initial Restore Point, and run the restore. This will put your registry and Windows settings back to how they were before WinHands touched anything, so you're safe. The only thing System Restore doesn't do is reinstall every app you debloated. If you removed a built-in app and later want it back, you can reinstall it through WinHands or from the Microsoft Store. Next, let's stop unnecessary apps from launching with Windows so more CPU and RAM are free for Tarkov. Open Task Manager with Ctrl-Shift-Escape. Now, if you see the simple view, click More Details, then go to the Startup or Startup Apps tab. This shows every program that tries to start with Windows, plus its startup impact. So the real offenders float to the top. Click the status column to show enabled items first. Click Startup Impact to group high impact items. Those enabled plus high impact entries are your main targets here. As a rule of thumb, keep enabled GPU drivers, audio drivers, security, antivirus, and input software you actually use. Often safe to disable are updaters, cloud sync apps, chat or overlay tools you don't use in every session. If you're not sure what something is, right-click it and open file location or search online. Only disable it if you're confident it's not core to Windows or your workflow. To disable something, right-click the entry, click disable. This does not uninstall anything. It just stops it from auto-starting. If you broke something you actually wanted, just come back here and set it to enable again. Easy. Next, we'll turn off Windows full screen optimization specifically for Tarkov, which can fix weird stutters for some people. Press Windows and E to open the File Explorer. go to your Tarkov folder, usually in C/battlestategame/EFT or wherever you installed it. Find Escape From Tarkov.exe, right-click it, Properties, go to the Compatibility tab, check Disable Full Screen Optimizations, click Apply, then OK. Now let's make sure Windows can use your SSD properly for paging, which helps with big RAM spikes in Tarkov. Press the Windows key, type Advanced System Settings, and open it. Under Performance, click Settings, go to the Advanced tab, and under Virtual Memory, click Change. So you have basically two choices here. Either leave automatically manage paging file size for all drives to on, or manually put the paging file on your SSD and not on a hard drive. This is really important. For most setup with 32 gigs of RAM, system manage on the SSD is ideal. Windows adjust as needed, and the SSD keeps paging fast. Also make sure that SSD is not close to full because Tarkov stutters badly when the drive is nearly packed. I try to have at least 20% of mine free. If you're GPU bound, don't let other apps steal GPU time while Tarkov is running. This is really important. In the apps you usually have open while playing, for example Discord, go to Settings, Advanced Hardware Acceleration, turn it off. In Chrome, go to Settings and find Use Hardware Acceleration when available and set it to off, then relaunch. Spotify, you can look for graphics or hardware acceleration toggle and turn it off too. This keeps your GPU focused on Tarkov instead of animating Discord and a bunch of browser tabs. Finally, Discord's in-game overlay can cost a bit of performance. You don't have to disable it globally, you can just turn it off for Tarkov. In Discord, go to Overlay, Game Overlay, and then you can select Escape From Tarkov down this list and toggle off. That way you keep overlays for other games if you want them, but Tarkov stays clean and lightweight as possible. You can also disable it completely right here. This section is all about how to optimize your GPU settings for Tarkov. Most of what you'll see is shown on NVIDIA, but almost every concept has an equivalent on AMD as well. First, make sure your graphics drivers are up to date. Use the official NVIDIA or AMD software. On NVIDIA, open the NVIDIA app and turn off automatically download drivers and let me choose when to install. Turn off NVIDIA Overlay if you don't plan on recording or using the replay buffer feature. In Settings, Notifications, turn off unnecessary pop-ups. Turn off automatically optimized newly added games and apps. In the Privacy and Telemetry section, turn off the extra configuration, performance, and usage data uploads you don't care about. On AMD Adrenalin, you can do the same kind of cleanup, disable overlays you don't use, stop automatic game optimization, and turn off any extra telemetry or experience improvement data sharing. Now for visibility specifically, I recommend using your GPU's color settings instead of Tarkov's post effects so you don't lose any performance. For daytime, on NVIDIA, I set gamma to 1.4 and contrast to about 104. And then for night raids, without night vision goggles, I push gamma to the max. On AMD, you can boost saturation in Adrenalin, and if you need gamma changes, press the Windows key, type Calibrate Display Color, and use the Display Color Calibration wizard to adjust gamma directly in Windows. Let's talk about smooth motion and auto overclocking. For Tarkov and any competitive shooter, do not use NVIDIA Smooth Motion. It generates in-between frames to make motion look better, but that adds extra latency. The FPS counter might go up, but the game feels less responsive, which is the opposite of what you want in a PvP game like Tarkov. The NVIDIA app also has an automatic tuning feature that can overclock your RTX card for you. You'll find it under the System and Performance tab. Enable automatic tuning, then leave the PC alone for 15 to 20 minutes while it runs its test. When it finishes, it applies a mild card-specific overclock automatically for you. You usually get a small free FPS bump, not a miracle here. It's a good option if you want a little extra performance without learning manual overclocking. If you see any instability and crashes in Tarkov after enabling it, just turn automatic tuning back off. On AMD, there's a similar idea, auto overclock. In Adrenalin, same rule of thumb, fine to test for a small bump, but if your system gets unstable, turn it off and go back to stock. Now let's set up Tarkov's GPU profile directly in the NVIDIA app. The same ideas apply on AMD, but here you'll see the NVIDIA side on screen. Open the app, open Program Settings, find Tarkov in the list or add it if it's not there. Image scaling off, Tarkov's own upscalers, handle the UI better, anisotropic filtering, application control, let Tarkov decide. Everything anti-aliasing related, leave off. You'll choose TA or TA high inside Tarkov, so don't override it in the driver. For low latency mode, you can leave it to off. Tarkov supports NVIDIA reflex. Set reflex in-game, don't fight it here. For power management, set it to prefer maximum performance. This keeps clocks high while you're in raid without wasting power everywhere else. Vertical sync, use application setting, then the small optimizations, texture filtering, anisotropic sample optimization on, trilinear optimization on, negative LOD bias allow, quality high performance if you care only about FPS, high quality if you want the cleanest image. And for AMD Adrenaline, you can mirror the same philosophy. Use a per game profile for Tarkov, keep AA and AF on use application settings. The key here is to be deliberate about any anti-lag or frame cap features so they're not fighting Tarkov's own limiter. How to optimize your RAM for Tarkov. Check your current RAM speed in Windows, press Ctrl-Shift-Escape to open the task manager, go to the performance tab and click memory. Look at the speed field. If it shows something low like 2133 MHz or 2400 MHz, but your RAM kit is advertised as higher, then the high-speed profile is not enabled yet on your PC. If this is the case, press the Windows key, type System Information and open it. Note baseboard manufacturer and baseboard product. That's your motherboard brand and model. In your browser, search how to enable XMP, your motherboard brand, your motherboard model. I recommend following the manufacturer's documentation or videos directly. You'll notice this is a massive performance upgrade for any Tarkov player. If you're planning hardware upgrades mainly for Tarkov, the rough priority should be CPU and platform, RAM, SSD, and then your GPU. CPU and platform. The largest performance gains will come from both of these, so moving to a modern platform with a strong gaming CPU and a big cache. And that's what fixes 1% lows and stutters first. To get my hardware recommendations on all of the following, check the PC parts tier list in the Discord, which I'll update every month. RAM, aim for 32 gigs. Tarkov and whatever you're running on your desktop can blow past 16 gigs and cause paging and stutters. For storage, Tarkov belongs on an SSD, ideally 1 TB plus NVMe, so the game, Windows, and page file all have room. GPU, usually upgrade this last for Tarkov. It matters for resolution and upscaling, but most people are limited by CPU, RAM first. Current card and brand picks are kept updated in the Discord as well. Treat this as a long-term path, not a one-day shopping list. Even small moves like going from a hard drive to an SSD or going from 16 gigs to 32 gigs of RAM can make Tarkov feel way better. One quick note on peripherals and settings for Tarkov. For Tarkov specifically, mouse polling rate can have a big impact on both how the game feels and how smoothly it runs. A polling rate of 1000 Hz, that's 1 millisecond, is generally the sweet spot for Tarkov. Going higher means your mouse is sending far more input reports per second, which Tarkov's engine does not handle efficiently. This can cause FPS drops, extra CPU usage, and micro stutters even. That's why many high-level players stick to 1000 Hz even when their mouse supports much higher polling rates now. If you notice stutters or choppiness while aiming, especially when quickly turning or tracking targets, open your mouse software, set the polling rate to 1000 Hz, apply the change, and then test in rate to feel the difference. If all of this feels like a lot, Merc Tweaks from Stin's build is the one who optimized my own system. He handled CPU and GPU tuning, detailed RAM overclocking, and a deep Windows debloat and optimization pass so Tarkov actually runs how it should. If you want the same treatment for your rig, you can book a session with him using the link in the description. And if this guide helped you in any way, please subscribe. Lethal out.